What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to do some more cloud hacking, cloud pen testing on pwnedlabs.io. Now, if you've never heard of pwnedlabs.io, you are missing out. Pwned Labs, hands down, is the best platform for learning AWS, GCP, and Azure pen testing. Think about like Try Hack Me or Hack the Box, but for the cloud. Now, other platforms do offer cloud training, but generally to get cloud training, you need to have like an enterprise license and then spend money on top of that just to get access to cloud training. The cool thing about Pwned Labs is they have over 30 completely free labs that are like plug and play. You don't host it yourself. You just turn the lab on and you can learn cloud pen testing, and they have even more that are available with the premium subscription. And look, the premium sub is only $20 a month or $200 a year, way more affordable than basically anywhere else for learning hands-on cloud pen testing. And I have kind of a sneak peek of something that I'm talking to Pwned Labs about. We are going to be doing a giveaway really soon for 3 premium 1-year premium subscriptions to Pwned Labs for the Work Smarter Discord community. So if you're not part of the Work Smarter Discord community, go join it. If you don't have an invite link, maybe if you ask in chat, someone will give one to you nicely. Otherwise, do some OSINT, go to my LinkedIn. You'll be able to find an invite to the Work Smarter Discord, but we'll be doing a giveaway there based on some really good write-ups that are done. So stay tuned for that to give you a taste of Pwned Labs. But without any further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. Here is the lab that I would love for us to do together. It's leverage Writable S3 Bucket to steal admin cookie. Now, previous labs that I've done, actually all of the Pwned Labs that I've done have all been like from a CTF approach where I go into it blind and it's more like your boot to root machine, but for the cloud. This one's going to be a little bit different because as you can see, it says it's not suitable for a CTF approach. You'll notice this throughout Pwned Labs. Most of them are suitable for a CTF approach, which means, hey, you can go into this from a black box perspective and kind of figure it out on your own. The ones that aren't suitable for a CTF approach, it just means there are certain things that you're not going to be able to figure out on your own, at least not easily. So it recommends following along with the official walkthrough. Now, full disclosure, I have done this lab ahead of time, and the reason I want to showcase it to you is because I think it's really cool. What we're going to end up doing is we're going to find an S3 bucket that is misconfigured. Super common thing that you see in the real world. You can just go to HackerOne and type in like S3 bucket and see a bunch of reports on how S3 buckets can be misconfigured. But one of the most severe vulnerabilities or misconfigurations when it comes to an S3 bucket is if the S3 bucket is world writable. That means anyone can upload files into the S3 bucket, and often how an S3 bucket is used by a website is it's used to host scripts being used on that website. So if you can imagine, you have a world writable S3 bucket and anyone can write to it, and it's hosting scripts for a website. Well, an attacker could upload a malicious script, let's say cross-site scripting, in order to steal a session cookie or steal credentials, and then they would be able to do that almost like a supply chain attack through the S3 bucket in order to attack the website, and this lab is going to showcase that. So let's go ahead and dive into it. I do believe this is a premium lab, so if you don't have a premium sub to Pwned Labs, well, go get one, first of all. But even if you don't, you can live vicariously through me. I will demonstrate the full attack path. We'll go through the walkthrough together. It's kind of like we're sitting down next to each other and just hanging out and working on this lab together. The first thing I need to do is get on the VPN. So let me just jump over to here. Go to downloads and sudo open VPN Pwned Labs, which I'm actually on a different account than I generated this VPN for. So I might have to switch over. Yeah, I thought maybe my VPN wouldn't work. Let me go ahead and re-download my VPN on this account and we'll see if it works. And I do know they just got done doing a maintenance window, so there's also a chance maybe not everything is back up, but we'll give it a shot and see what happens. There we go. I got it downloaded. So sudo open VPN. There we go. And we are on the VPN. Beautiful. So open a new tab. I'll call it terminal. We'll cd to home. Tyler, Pwned Labs. We'll make a directory called S3 Bucket. There we go. And now we're in our S3 bucket and we have an IP address here. Let's just make sure we can actually ping this IP. And we can. Okay, beautiful. So everything is going well. And finally, let's go ahead and get our note set up. And actually, I need to hide my screen for a moment Because one fun thing I have access to at Pwned Labs is I have early access to the Thunderdome network. So let me just give you a promo for that. Thunderdome is being released, I believe, in April. And what Thunderdome network is going to be is anyone who has an annual subscription to Pwned Labs, so that $200 a year for that annual subscription. If you have an annual subscription, you'll have access to Thunderdome. Thunderdome is a red team multi-cloud platform, which means you need to be able to compromise Azure, GCP, and AWS to finish the lab. I believe there's 9 different flags spread across this really massive, realistic lab environment, and I have early access to it to do QA and provide some feedback. I have the first 3 flags so far, and let me just tell you, it really is an incredible lab. So stay tuned for that, but because I have been working on it, it is in one of my note files, and I didn't want the wrong notes to pop up, so you guys would get a snapshot of it. But here we go. As usual, for some reason, my cherry tree on this VM always resets its preferences because cherry tree hates me for some reason. So let me just fix that real quick. We'll change our font, make it a little bit bigger, so people on YouTube don't say, "Oh, I can't see." Code font. There we go. And we'll go ahead and make another tab, and we'll just call this Writable S3 Bucket. And let's go ahead and set up our notes here. So we have our entry point, so we can go ahead and grab that. We'll do target is right there. We'll try to treat this more like a realistic pen test. When you do a pen test, you usually have a target that's in scope. You don't want to attack anything that's out of scope. That is what separates us pen testers from, well, criminals, staying in scope of whatever our pen test is. So here is our scenario. After gaining a foothold in the huge logistics AWS environment by compromising a user in a phishing attack, we have found ssh.txt on their desktop with the IP address above, along with the credentials Marco and HLPass99. We have been tasked with getting deeper inside their on-prem and AWS network and have permissions to exploit any other users or interactive processes we may find. So let's go ahead and grab that, and we'll just drop that in our notes as scenario. If I could learn how to type. Oh, I want to do plain text. There we go. And so we have some of our creds there. So actually, before we even follow the walkthrough, let's just SSH into the machine and do our own enumeration, searching around and see if we can find anything interesting. So we'll go ahead and SSH as Marco at 10.108. Tyler.0.43. And password is HLPass. Oh, how about that first? HLPass99. Is that what it was? Okay, beautiful. We'll write bash just to give ourselves a little better looking shell. And we are Marco. Can we do anything? HLPass99. We can't run sudo lsla. We have bash history, but it's going to dev null, so that's not going to be interesting to us. But let's go ahead and just go to the root directory and see if we have anything interesting here. We can do netstat ANO, see what. Oh, we don't have netstat installed. Well, let's go to like var. And one thing to always look for is if there's a web server, and we can see the dub there. So we'll cd over to our web server, lsla, html, lsla. And so we have a web server running here, and we have a interesting looking file. Can we read that? We can try it. So we'll cat, and we get permission denied. So we can't read that. We can actually see it here. It's owned by www data, and you can see as our user, we don't have read, write, or execute permissions, but we are able to read admin.php. We can't read config, but we can read contact me, we can read home, and we can read index. We can cd over to assets and just a CSS file. Okay, well, we have what appears to be a web server running. So let's go ahead and hit this IP with a nmap scan. I'm actually going to use Rust scan just because of the speed. We'll rename that to terminal because I like to keep these clear. We'll call that SSH. And now we can do Rust scan, pass it our target. And then the cool thing about Rust scan is you can pass the output of the scan to nmap, and we can do that with this. So what this is going to do, I'll let the scan start, but it's first going to run Rust scan on this IP, and then any open ports, what it's going to do is run the -a scan via nmap. Now the -a flag in nmap just means, hey, throw all of the enumeration stuff at it, give us version information, tell us everything we can find out about these 2 ports. While this runs, let me look over at chat, make sure I'm not missing anything. Har said, just done this box. Hey, congrats for doing it, and thanks for being part of the Pwned Labs crew. YN said, do you think getting AWS certs like SSA are good if you want to get into cyber? Absolutely. Yeah, and it depends what you kind of want to do. Like if you want to be blue team engineering, they're especially important. They're a little less important for being a pen tester, but still helpful as you speak to clients about some AWS type things. And here we go. We have some results here. So as usual, let's go ahead and set up some of our notes. The first thing I'll do is I'm going to paste in my Nmap scan results, and we're going to make separate tabs for each one of these services. Not as big of a deal for this box because we only have 2 ports, but on boxes where you might have 5, 6, 7 or more ports, it's really helpful to keep your different services organized in their own little note area. So as you enumerate those ports, you can keep your notes separated. So we'll call this one SSH because, well, that's what it is. And this one is HTTP. So we'll grab this and I'll make a sub node here and we'll call it HTTP. Now, SSH, not going to be too helpful to us right now. We already have SSH access to the box, but we do know that there's a web server running, and we even have access to the files on the web server, so we don't need to do Go Bust or anything like that, but we do have a web server that's running here. We'll just put a line there, and let's go ahead and check out this web server. And I don't know if we will need Cato, but I always like to show off Cato, so let's go and open up Cato as well. If you've never heard of Cato, it is a web app vulnerability proxy. So think about Burp Suite, but much more affordable. Even the free version of Cato doesn't rate limit you on things like intruder attacks. So check out Cato. It's written from the ground up in Rust. I love the look of it, and I like supporting devs who are trying to make things more affordable for people. So I try to showcase Cato when I stream. So we'll get Cato pulled up. I'll just throw that to the side, and we'll just open up Firefox to keep things clear right here. And we'll go to our website. And we'll get Cato pulled up, start proxying some of that traffic. I meant to go like this with Firefox, but I grabbed the wrong window. There we go. So we'll turn on Foxy Proxy, and it should start loading it. If we look at our site map, you can actually see from other ones, but we just have the 108 right there. So it is loading it, and all is good. So we don't need to proxy anything yet unless we don't need to intercept anything, I should say. We'll just kind of let it proxy, but we have a basic website here. Just seems to be a static website. Can't do much of anything on here. Blah, blah, blah. So nothing that actually seems to be functioning. So we can always look at the page source. And right away, we see that some of these assets are being hosted in an S3 bucket. You can know what is an S3 bucket because, well, it literally has a name S3, and at s3.amazon and aws.com is where we're hosting some of these assets from. So let's go ahead and poke at this S3 bucket a little bit, and we will take a screenshot of this for our notes. Like if we're doing a good pen test, we want to make sure we're documenting the things we find. Need to pull up my screenshot tool, and because people always ask, what I use for screenshots is Lightshot. So this is Lightshot right here that I'm doing, and we'll just grab this box. I just want to highlight, hey, here is our S3 bucket, and we'll copy that, drop it in our notes, and we'll say S3 bucket is here. Eventually, we'll go through the walkthrough since it is a guided room, but we'll continue to do some of this exploring on our own. But we have this S3 bucket. So here, one thing we can try is just saying, hey, can we like list from the S3 bucket? And we are able to actually list it. So that's vulnerability in and of itself if there's anything sensitive, which means this S3 bucket is world listable. And we can also do this from the terminal. So the way we can do it from the terminal is we'll grab the name of the S3 bucket, which I think that's the name right there, and we'll pull up our terminal. And we do AWS S3 LS to list, and then paste it in there, and we'll do no sign request because we want to do it as an anonymous user to see if it is world writable or world listable, which it is. We can see assets there, so we can go to assets. And we would want, if we're doing a pen test, we would definitely want to document that, at least as an informational, maybe higher if we found sensitive information in the S3 bucket. So let's go and grab a screenshot of this as a vulnerability. We'll just grab some of these here. And we'll go over to our notes here, and we will say S3 bucket is world listable. And we'll drop a screenshot there. And just so our notes are a little easier to read, because that is a finding if we were doing a pen test here, we can go ahead and make that like an H1 header, and we would eventually transfer that over to our pen test report if this is a real engagement. So it is world listable. So then the other thing you want to ask, I kind of think about S3 buckets sort of like FTP. So for those of you who might be new to the cloud, new to AWS, everything is more confusing and more verbose, which just means I use ChatGPT for all of it because I can't remember the silly AWS syntax. But S3 buckets remind me of an FTP bucket. If you're used to a traditional CTF, when you see FTP being exposed in a CTF, one of the first things you try is, number one, can I log into the FTP server as an anonymous user? And if I can I list files and check for sensitive information? Well, it's the same with an S3 bucket. When you see an S3 bucket, one of the first things you do is say, hey, can I log in essentially as an anonymous user with this no sign request? Well, if the answer is yes, the other thing you do on an FTP server is you very quickly see, can I write to the FTP server? And you do that by creating like a text file called hello.txt, and you do put hello.txt after you've authenticated as an anonymous user to the FTP server and see if you can write to it. Well, it's similar with S3. We want to see, can we write to the S3 bucket? So let's go ahead and do echo hello, and we'll just call it hello.txt. And I don't even remember the full syntax for doing this, so I'm gonna guess, is it AWS S3 CP hello.txt, and then the name of the S3 bucket and the location. I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but we'll figure it out together. Hello.txt and no sign request. Fingers crossed. Boom, was my syntax correct? Beautiful. So it seems as if we have anonymous write access to it as well, which honestly, if this is a pen test, this is like a critical finding, early disclosure, let the client know right away they want to configure their S3 bucket appropriately before they get pwned by a real threat actor. But let's list the bucket, and we can see my hello.txt file is in the bucket. So let's go ahead and grab that as a screenshot for our pen test report if we were doing a pen test on this. We'll do that, and we'll say, yo, look, it was successful. Copy that, and we'll say S3 bucket is world writable. And this would be an early disclosure / critical finding. I just heard one of my kids. Give me a second, y'all. Hear one of my kids upstairs. I think my wife's helping him, but he sounds upset. He should be sleeping. Or is it Ava, my daughter? All right, y'all. I have to go figure out what is going on with my kids. I'm going to throw up the break time. I will be right back in like 5 minutes. Give me just a second. I'll edit this for the YouTube video. I'll be right back. So here we are. Adding to our notes is the S3 bucket is world writable, and this would be an early disclosure or a critical finding because, of course, a threat actor could write anything to the S3 bucket, which is actually what we are going to demonstrate in this lab. But we were able to write hello.txt to the S3 bucket. But let's go ahead and look at our S3, not our S3, our SSH connection. We see we have an admin.php. So can we go to it? Let's go ahead and give it a shot. If we go here, what if we go to admin? And there is an admin panel, but we don't have access to the credentials because I'm guessing they are stored in config.php or in this weird Excel file right here. But once again, we're not able to read either one of those files, but we could look at, or how a threat actor would likely do it, is remember this S3 bucket is world writable, and we could figure out, hey, what scripts is the admin panel relying on? So if we view page source, we can see, for example, we have this bootstrap, common bootstrap JavaScript file right here. What if we modify the bootstrap.min.js file and we put in some cross-site scripting payload to steal either a session cookie or to try to get some credentials that way. And that's actually what the lab is going to guide us through. So I'll do most of the steps here and then we'll switch back over to the lab. But the first thing we want to do is download that file, make a backup of that file. So if we screw something up, or as a threat actor, what a threat actor might do is they might steal credentials and then replace the file so that you don't actually detect what happened after they get the credentials that they want. So once again, if we go back to our file here, it's the bootstrap.min.js, so the minimized. So we can do AWS S3 CP for copy, and then the S3 bucket right here. And we'll paste that in, and we will go ahead and grab the bootstrap.min.js, and we will copy it to our current directory. Oh, and we have to do no sign request. There we go. So now we have the bootstrap.min.js. And do I have Visual Studio Code on this VM? Okay, I do. Ignore this Windows Defender bypass. It does not actually work. I was playing around with some Defender bypasses and I somewhat got it working, but it was detected. So feel free to steal this code right here I came up with and play with it on your own, but it doesn't actually fully work as of March 16th, 2024. It did get caught. But let me go ahead and go File, and we'll just open up our folder, and we'll go to Tyler. We'll just open up all of Pwned Labs. And yes, I trust the authors. There's Thunderdome. I can't show you guys Thunderdome. Can't show you any of that information. But if we go to our S3 bucket right here, here's our bootstrap min.js, and here's what we can modify. But before I get ahead of myself, let me jump back over to the lab, because like I said before, this lab is meant to be kind of a guided lab. It's not suitable for a CTF approach, so let's make sure we're not missing anything major here. So the real world context, this is helpful for us to read. Stealing and using cookies from privileged users is a serious and real world security issue. This type of attack, often referred to as session sidejacking or session hijacking, involves an attacker obtaining a user's session cookie, allowing them to impersonate that user on a web app. Administrative privs in a web app context often allows for accessing sensitive information or other functionality that may be abusable. In terms of writable S3 buckets, various sources estimate that between 5% and 20% of all public S3 buckets are writable, which is insane. But we've done a lot of this ourselves. We'll kind of just scroll through here. Here is the same thing that we found. And here's the same kind of thing that we did. They used the recursive flag just to list it all out. I just did it manually. Either way obviously works. They checked the bucket ACLs. I literally just attempted to write a file, which worked as well. And here's the bootstrap.min.js. And good call. You know what I didn't do is I said I was going to make a backup of it, and then I didn't make one. So we'll just copy bootstrap, and we'll call it bootstrap.min.js.back, like that. And let's go back to our walkthrough. So we can add the following JavaScript payload. So very basic payload in order to steal a cookie. We can walk through this a little bit. So the first variable here is we're initiating a new XML HTTP request object. This is just required to make, as you can imagine, the HTTP request. It's a browser API that allows for making asynchronous requests, commonly used for AJAX requests in web applications. And then we're setting up the request. So you can see we are going to have the admin user or our victim do a GET request and send over the document cookie. So this sets it up with the following parameters. We have the GET request, of course, and then the URL to which the request will be sent. We will update the local host to match our IP on the VPN because we want to be that attacker IP, and it will hit our listener port on port 8000. So we could just set up a very simple, I think Netcat listener honestly might work. Otherwise, we could use PHP to set up a listener that way, and it will append the victim's cookie as a query to our URL, etc., etc. So here it is in the full payload. We do need to modify it a little bit, but we can go ahead and copy that here. And we will just drop it in like so, but we do need to update the IP here to be ours. Let me go to this, 10.8.0.92. Of course, if you're following along, your IP is going to be different. It's whatever your VPN IP is for Pwned Labs. So don't use the IP you see me doing. You have your own IP. We'll place it before legitimate file contents and we'll upload it. And then let's just see if it works. So This all looks good to me. We will go ahead and save it. Oreo Byte said, how long should it take? Because it would never call back. Well, let's find out. We'll see how long it takes for me to get a call back. But we have our bootstrap.min.js, and we will go ahead and upload this file now. And because of the world writable permissions, it should automatically overwrite the current bootstrap.min.js file that is in there. So let's first go netcat nvlp 8000. We'll set up a very simple netcat listener. Because it's a GET request, well, you know what? Let's do Python 3 server 8000. That might just be a little bit better if I test it myself and it tries to grab mine and I don't get hung up on a netcat connection. Let's just set up our own Python web server, and we should see GET requests coming to it based on that script that we're uploading. At least that works in my mind. We'll see if it works in practice. Let's do AWS S3 CP bootstrap.min.js, and we'll grab this S3 bucket right here. And we'll do no sign request, and fingers crossed that it goes through. Okay, and it did. Let me check out chat, make sure I'm not missing anything. Abeyo said, is Kato a web app or could one download a desktop app? Yeah, one could download a desktop app, correct. If you go to kato.io, you can see all the options for that. And then make sure I'm not missing anything on LinkedIn, since I always seem to have to refresh to see comments. And I don't think I am, and everything else looks good. All right, let's see if we've gotten anything. So nothing yet, but we can test it. Like, let's see if this actually went through. We can go ahead and go to our admin panel here. If I reload it, do I get any hits? Okay, so I got a hit from my IP. So we know it's working, because you can see it's passing the PHP session ID, but for me. And we don't need my PHP session ID. We need the actual victim. And we know that it's me because that IP right there matches my IP up there. But as you can see from the victim's perspective, we didn't see anything different happen. The only thing we saw is I was able to get the PHP session ID of the victim. So, Oreo Byte, love how it just works for you. Well, it hasn't, the scripted part hasn't worked for me, but it does work in my testing. Like, I'm able to see my PHP session ID. I'm guessing it might just take a few minutes. So let's go ahead and read ahead and see what we're going to do next. So it says an S3 updates to a single file are atomic, and that if we make a put request, oh, so that's just saying it replaces it. I already said that because it's world writable. We can just upload the same file and it will write over the file that is already there. Next, on the server, start a netcat listener with, oh, so do they want me to do this on the SSH server? So, Oreo Byte, maybe that's why it didn't work for you either. Maybe it's cross origin or something that's preventing this from happening. That if you start the listener on your attacking machine, which is what I did, the cross origin resource policy might prevent it from actually sending the PHP session ID over to our attacker machine. So we actually need to set up the listener on our SSH box, which is why it had localhost. That makes sense. I bet that's the reason. Oreo Byte, I'm guessing that's why it didn't work for you either. I don't know, tried an SSH, tried on my machine, didn't give anything. So let's go ahead and try this. Let's rewrite this a little bit and make it so it actually does localhost as the walkthrough implies. But instead of localhost, we could actually change it to the IP of the machine. Is there a preference here? I would think changing to the IP of the machine would actually work better than localhost, because then we wouldn't get caught up in any cross-origin resource stuff because it's actually going to our IP, right? But, you know, in the walkthrough, it's using localhost. And so let's just try that. Let's try the localhost way. And if that doesn't work, we'll go ahead and play around with it. So let's go ahead and grab this file again, open up here, paste it in. This time it's localhost. We'll go ahead and save and go to SSH and set up a listener here, netcat nvlp 8000, just so we have our listener going. And we can, we'll leave that open to make sure it actually gets replaced. Let's go ahead and re-upload this file now that we updated it. Go back over to our admin panel and refresh it. Now I'm hoping the SSH gets it and not mine. it didn't seem to update the file. You notice it's still actually hitting my listener right here, so that's interesting. My bootstrap.min.js file that I uploaded, what's this pointing to? This is pointing to localhost. I'm thinking that actually needs to be the IP of the machine, because you can see it is getting, I guess, localhost there. Let me play around with this a little bit. Let's keep messing with this to figure out exactly how it is supposed to work. If we go back to this, or actually go back to here and grab our target IP. Well, first, okay, a few things. I know I'm going back and forth, but I'm troubleshooting live, thinking through the process live in my head. I want to see if we view page source, what if we open this file ourselves? This is the one we modified. So this does have the updated file here, but it's not sending it. Oh, hey, there it is. So it just took a little bit. So it did actually do it properly. You can see it did send it over to here from 127.0.0.1, and we were able to get the PHP session ID. So this must be the admin's PHP session ID. So cool. We were doing it right. I was just overthinking it a little bit. Let's go ahead and go back to our website here. This one right here, we can close out some of these. And we can go to more tools. I think it'd be web developer tools and storage maybe. And our cookie here, we'll update our cookie to the admin cookie and see if that saves. Refresh. Oh, did it replace it? Was there other directories once I logged in as admin? It's config.php. Can I access that? Nope. Let's just go to admin. So just admin. Okay. Admin.php. Cookies. This is the right session, right? Whoops, did not mean to do that. Yeah, localhost worked, OreoByte, correct. Localhost worked just fine. Okay, well we have the session cookie. I'd assume, okay, that's what I did. I just dropped in PHP session ID. Oh, navigate to home. I'm just keep trying to reload admin.php, which is literally just a login screen. So obviously that's not going to work. Okay, and now we have access to home and it says export users, and I bet that XLS file that we found with SSH access, so this one right here, that's going to be a list of those exported users, and because we're able to leverage that Writable S3 bucket to steal that session cookie, we can actually export those users now and get access. So we could do either one, I'm guessing. Okay, maybe just that one. All right, that's fine. We'll go here, go here. See, it's still coming through. CP, home, Tyler, downloads. What the heck was that file called? Did it start with an 8? Oh, look at that. I was right. Oh, is it password protected? I don't have open office or anything. Let's go ahead and just throw it in. Like Google Docs maybe, since I'm just on a Linux machine. Hold on, let me authenticate to a Gmail account real quick. I don't know what I'm logged in as by default on this. Oh, cool, we're on the right one. We're on my Hack Smarter demo account. We'll go over to Drive here, and let's see if this is password protected. If it is, we should likely be able to crack it with John the Ripper. Like, I think it's John Excel whatever to whatever. Let's do file upload. And we'll go to Tyler, Pwned Labs, S3 Bucket, and here's the file open. Oh no, it's not encrypted at all. But here it is. We just had to open it in actual Excel type things. We couldn't just cat it out in our Linux terminal. I was thinking comma separated spreadsheet, but I suppose it's actually an Excel file. So then you could unzip it, I suppose, would be the other thing you could have done. And then you could have got the information by unzipping it. Would it be workbook or worksheet, CD? Well, cat, workbook. Okay, no, so CD, worksheets, cat, sheet 1. So that'd be another way that you could do it. I'm pretty sure if you go through that. Oh, maybe. That doesn't quite look like the same data. You could eventually figure it out that way. Yeah, you could open in LibreOffice. I just don't have it installed on my Kali VM here. Any of that would work. But there we go. We have all these different credentials, and we have the flag that we were looking for. So we can go back over to our scenario here, and we'll finish looking at the walkthrough, but let me go ahead and drop the flag in here. Failed? Okay. I think it's probably just because my session expired. Yeah, that's what I figured. I am a human being, I promise. And now we should be able to drop the flag in here. Let me just jump back to the lab now that I'm actually authenticated. And there we go. We dropped the flag in. But let's finish looking at the walkthrough and read some of the resources to see how this attack has happened in the real world. I think like one that comes to mind, y'all, is the Capital One breach a few years ago. That was due to a misconfigured S3 bucket, and that was a massive breach. So if they don't have it in the resources, we'll read about that ourselves. But, oh, you could export it. Yeah, that's everything we did. All that's good. And then you would just replace the file, of course, if you wanted to hide your tracks. So defense, we should ensure that the S3 bucket permissions are correctly configured and that only trusted entities should have right permissions. Absolutely. In this scenario, I realized my hood wasn't up, guys. Maybe that's why I was having some bugs. In this scenario, the public was, I think the S3 bucket was publicly accessible, but it's also easy to assume that by following the authenticated users group access to write to a bucket, this would be restricted to our AWS account. In fact, this setting will allow anyone with an AWS account to write to the bucket. And that is something to check in a pen test. If the S3 bucket does not allow anonymous access, if you authenticate to your own AWS account, you can sometimes access it that way. There are also several security configs that could have been configured on the web server to prevent exploitation, including using HTTPS. We should always use HTTPS, not just HTTP. HTTPS ensures that the data between the client and server is encrypted, preventing man-in-the-middle attacks and eavesdropping. If that was in use, even if an attacker could tamper with the S3 content, they wouldn't be able to easily capture the traffic without the relevant decryption keys. Implement a content security policy. It is recommended to implement a content security policy header in your web app. A CSP can be used to block unauthorized XAHR requests to domains other than the application's origin, which in this scenario would have prevented the exfiltration of data to a malicious server, and use same site cookie and HTTP only attributes. We can set to strict or lax to ensure the cookie is only sending requests coming from the same site, which reduces the risk from cross-site request forgery attacks, and HTTP only prevents a cookie from being accessed via JavaScript. This means that even if there's malicious JavaScript like cross-site scripting, it can't read the cookie value. Now, you can do other things with cross-site scripting, but yeah, you wouldn't be able to read the cookie value. One interesting thing you could do, though, is you could actually get the admin user to export the Excel file and send it over to you. I have a video on that, and you know, we could, I'm thinking in my head whether or not that would work. I might take this lab a step further and see if I could exploit it that way, just because I have time. We'll play around with this a little bit deeper. Well, let's go through this. For static assets, it's recommended to use versioning and sub-resource integrity checks. That's to make sure everything isn't modified by an attacker. In Amazon Mace, you can identify S3 buckets that allow public read or write. Refer to the lab Identity Public S3 Buckets with Amazon Mace. I haven't done that lab. I'll have to check it out for identifying world readable and writable buckets. So I think, oh yeah, that was like one of those Discord stealers that stole all the stuff. The Capital One, I think, was due to a misconfigured S3 bucket, right? Let's see if I'm right. Misconfigured AWS databases, okay. Oh, it's a person from Seattle. Made off with more than 100 million credit applications that were held in a misconfigured storage bucket. That's crazy. They had 100 million credit applications in an S3 bucket, like what we just discovered in this lab, that was world listable. So they could just download the S3 buckets. That's absolutely insane. Like, this is real world stuff that we're doing in this labs. This isn't just CTF stuff, y'all. This has caused real damage, these misconfigurations. Kelvin said, can Pwned Lab guide me to be good at cloud pen testing and general knowledge about the cloud? Yeah. The cool thing about Pwned Labs is every single lab has a full detailed walkthrough that guides you through it. So even if you're a brand new beginner, the best way to learn, whether it's cloud pen testing or just general pen testing, in my opinion, isn't reading a book about it, it's doing it. So the best thing you can do to learn cloud security is dive into it head first, follow the guide, and do it. So absolutely, Kelvin, it would be helpful. That is, that's crazy though. That's what I thought the Capital One breach was. Okay, what I want to try to do, I don't know if this will work, but it's worth a shot. If I go to my GitHub, offensive security, I wrote a script for the room hijack on Try Hack Me that requires using cross-site scripting to steal sensitive information. So I'm wondering if I can do this same attack, but without stealing their session, have them send me that login information directly. I just don't remember what I even called it. Here it is. So let me grab my little Python script here, quite basic Python script. But let's take this a step further, which I always encourage people to do this. When you do a lab like this, I think OXDF and IPSec do a good job of going like beyond root. Go deeper into the lab. See other ways that you can exploit the lab, because that's how you learn. It's just by going deeper and playing around with it. Just because you got the flag, that's not the end of the lab. Keep learning and squeezing all the material you can out of the lab that you're working on. So let's do nano, and I'll just call it exploit.py. Let's see if my code actually works. Okay, it does. So this will generate a malicious JS file. When this is used in a cross-site scripting attack, it will cause the victim to navigate to the target directory and send the content to the attacker. This is useful if the victim is an admin or privileged user with access to sensitive information. So I'm trying to think of how we would end up doing this though. So if we go back over to our admin panel login, what does this request look like? If I turn on that and hit export here, forward that. So it's getting this file right here. So if I send this over to replay, turn that off for now. And it's going to give me, of course, the binary data. But this is what the request looks like. Now, of course, an attacker wouldn't be able to guess that, but you can imagine in a different scenario, the request might be like passwords.xlsx or something along those lines, and you would be able to get the information that way. So let's go ahead and copy this. Yes, copy. And so we want to do the directory, which is that, which I don't know if our question mark is gonna, I might have to escape that. Let's put this in quotes. There we go, that all looks good. And then we'll pass it our IP, which is gonna be our attacker IP address. But in this instance, it's actually gonna be localhost because of how we have to exploit this on this server. So it'd be localhost, right? And it's gonna do the attacker IP there. We can modify it. If I do localhost, I don't know if this will work. I can do localhost 8000. Okay. Path. All right, this will be interesting. I'm actually quite excited to see if this works. If I copy this, and we will go back to our bootstrap.min.js, which we have right here. Path. Okay, I don't know, guys, this is gonna work, but maybe someone in the future will see this video and this will trigger an idea of some attack they can do on like a pen test. So even if my attack doesn't work, maybe this will give someone else smarter than me a cool idea on how they'll be able to do this. But now that we've done that, we can go ahead. Did I save it? Just in case I didn't save. Let's go ahead and upload that. cp bootstrap.min.js S3 front end web assets. I'm not going to type that out. And it won't autocorrect for me. We'll just go back to admin. Oh, come on. And my daughter's not crying about me either, so her ear must be feeling better, I hope. Made it through the lab so far. We have the view page source. Let's grab this bucket information. Oh my goodness. Fine, just open the link. All I want is the bucket. And instead of a netcat listener, let's do let's try that. Upload our request. Okay, and technically, can I trigger this on myself since I'm logged in as an admin right now with the admin session ID? First, see if I still have access to home.php, which I do. Oh, message unsupported method options. So it attempted to send it. Here, let me look at my script real quick. Look at this. Send a path to make a new HTTP request. Get the file content code as URI component. Send to. Is it pre-flighting the request? Is that my issue? Well, I'm not going to play around with this too much, but I think if you spent enough time digging into this, you could do one single cross-site scripting payload that would not just steal their session cookie, but would send you that file right away, and you'd be able to actually get that target file from the victim. I do have a YouTube video that explains how to do this on the hijack room on TryHackMe. The script I just showed you is the one I wrote for the hijack room. So if you want to see how I did that for that room on TryHackMe, you can check it out. I have a short video that explains a full attack. I even made a cool little diagram. Matter of fact, since this is YouTube, I will put a link to that video right up there, and you can check it out yourself to see how I ended up doing that. But this is the end of this video. This is the end of the leveraging the Writable S3 bucket, essentially to steal an admin session cookie and download some username. So hey, hope you found this helpful. If you are not a subscriber to Pwned Labs, go subscribe. What are you waiting on? It is an incredible platform for learning cloud security. But hey y'all, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.